At Thanksgiving dinner, my father told me, go live on the streets. He didn't know I earned $27 million a year, so I just smiled and walked away. The dining room in our old Denver Craftsman was freezing, but my father's voice was colder. Thomas didn't whisper. He looked me straight in the eye, surrounded by crystal glasses and family tradition, and delivered his verdict. Maya, if you can't get your life together, maybe you belong in a shelter. My mother, Evelyn, adjusted the gold clasp on her necklace. My sister, Brooke, hid a grin behind her champagne flute. They were waiting for me to plead. Instead, I stood, smoothed my coat, and stepped out into the snow. They thought they were throwing out a failure. They had no idea they had just declared war on a ghost. 3 days after Thanksgiving, the silence in my penthouse wasn't lonely. It was expensive. From the 42nd floor, the Denver skyline looked like a circuit board of amber and steel, glowing against the dark spine of the Rockies. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass, sipping tea that cost more per ounce than the champagne Brooke had been drinking while laughing at my expense. My parents loved telling a very specific story about me. In their version, I was Maya the Drifter, the daughter who walked away from the respectable career path to play with software. To them, my silence at dinner was proof I was broken. They didn't understand I wasn't silent because I was defeated. I was silent because I was calculating. There's a particular kind of power in indifference. In business, we call it leverage. When you know you're holding the winning hand, you don't flip the table. You don't defend your dignity. You wait. My lack of reaction wasn't weakness. It was the confidence of a CEO who's already read the earnings report before the board meeting begins. I crossed the room to my desk, a slab of black marble floating in the center of the penthouse, and woke my monitors. Blue light flooded the space as the dashboard of my company, Vector Chain Systems, came online. While my father was telling extended family I was one paycheck away from homelessness, my algorithms were rerouting freight corridors for 3 of the largest retailers in North America. I logged into my private banking portal. The numbers refreshed. Last year, my income hadn't been $27 million after all. After bonuses and equity vesting, it was closer to 31. It wasn't just money. It was a wall of no I could put between myself and anyone who thought they could control me. Brooke liked to call herself a creative visionary. She ran a gallery called Silverline Studio in a revitalized district my parents bragged about endlessly. I opened a new tab and pulled public commercial records. I already knew foot traffic was down 35%. I knew the building needed structural remediation. I knew the illusion of success my family adored was bleeding cash. My phone vibrated on the marble. A text from my cousin Lauren. "Your mom is at church group," it read. "She's asking for prayers. She's telling people you're unstable and couch surfing." She was setting the story. I didn't feel angry. Anger implies surprise, and nothing about this surprised me. If I wasn't the failure they claimed, then their behavior became indefensible. So they rewrote reality. They needed me to be the tragedies. I replied with one word: let her. The wind in Denver doesn't just blow, it cuts. It scrapes against glass with a low, constant hum that reminds you how thin the line is between comfort and exposure. 3 days had passed since Thanksgiving, and the temperature had dropped sharply. Inside my family's version of events, though, the heat was just beginning to rise. I was sitting at my kitchen island when my phone lit up again. Lauren sent a screenshot from my mother's private Facebook group. The caption read, "Please keep our family in your prayers during this difficult season. Our eldest daughter, Maya, is struggling with severe instability and housing insecurity. We're offering support from a distance, but sometimes tough love is the only way to guide a lost soul." I zoomed in on the photo they used, an old picture of me from grad school, exhausted during finals week. They had chosen my worst angle on purpose: housing insecurity. I looked around my 28,000 square foot penthouse. I looked at the heated floors. I looked at the deed locked in my safe. If I was unstable, then their cruelty became compassion. They were heroes in a tragedy they had written themselves. I closed the message and opened Instagram. Brooke had posted minutes earlier, a photo of her standing inside Silverline Studio, champagne in hand, bathed in warm light. The caption read, "True art requires sacrifice. Proud of this new collection. Culture is the heartbeat of this city, and I'm honored to protect it." It was a beautiful image. It was also a complete fabrication. I had access to the data. Silverline Studio had been issued 2 notices for unpaid utilities in the last 6 months. The building's maintenance report showed deferred repairs. Brooke was playing curator in a burning house, and my parents were pointing at the smoke and calling it success. The following Monday started like any other in the high-stakes world of logistics, except for the email waiting in my inbox. It wasn't from a client. It was from a property management firm I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "Urgent notice of default, commercial lease agreement." I opened it expecting spam. Instead, I found a formal letter referencing Silverline Studio. My eyes scanned the document until one phrase stopped my breath cold. Personal guarantor. I downloaded the attached PDF, my hand tightening on the mouse. I scrolled to the final page, and there it was, my name, Maya Reynolds, signed in blue ink. It looked like my signature, the loop of the M, the angle of the R, but the pressure was wrong, the spacing was off. It was a flawless forgery. They hadn't just mocked me, they had used me. 4 years ago, they needed a cosigner with clean credit. My father's credit was already maxed out, so they chose me. The daughter they called a failure had quietly secured the future of the daughter they praised. The total liability was just over $590,000. I leaned back, the glow of the monitors washing over me. This was the function of a scapegoat. In psychology, the scapegoat doesn't just absorb blame, they absorb the family's shame. They needed me unsuccessful so they could feel superior, but they needed me financially intact so they could survive. It was a parasitic balance. I picked up my phone and called Daniel, my corporate attorney. Daniel specialized in mergers, acquisitions, and quiet destruction. "Daniel," I said, "I have a problem. Forgery, identity theft, a defaulted commercial lease. The perpetrators are my parents." After reviewing the documents, his voice was precise. "We can sue for fraud. It'll be public. It'll take years." "I know," I said. "I don't want messy. I want finished." He paused. "Then there's another option."
The landlord is a private equity REIT out of New York. They're unloading distressed assets. Your holding company could acquire not just the debt, but the building. The idea settled in my mind, sharp and elegant. If I sued, I stayed a victim. If I bought the building, I became the authority. I wouldn't argue with them, I'd remove them. "Do it," I said. "All cash. Close in 48 hours." They called it a miracle. My father stood in the center of Silverline Studio days later, lifting a crystal flute, praising the mysterious generosity of the universe. I stood on the sidewalk outside, watching through the glass as snow melted against the heated windows. Inside, they looked relieved, victorious, like people who thought they'd escaped consequence, unaware they were standing in front of it. My phone buzzed. Daniel's name. "The deed is recorded," he said. "Transfer is complete." I pushed open the door. The bell chimed, slicing through the conversation. Heads turned. My mother saw me first. Her smile didn't fade, it vanished. "Maya," she said, loud enough for the room to hear, "what are you doing here?" "I heard there was a celebration," I said. I didn't want to miss the toast. Brooke drifted over, silk dress whispering across the floor. "Brooke, please," she said. "We're expecting someone important any minute. The investor who bought the building is coming to finalize the lease addendum. This really isn't the time for you to be here." "The investor," I repeated. "Is that what you're calling Reynolds Equity Holdings now?" My father stiffened. "How do you know the name of the company?" "Public records," I said easily. "You know I read filings for fun." "Then you know they saved us," Brooke snapped. "They bought the building. They covered the debt. Someone finally saw the value in what I create. You need to leave." My mother leaned in, her voice sharp. "Now, before Mr. Caldwell arrives." "Mr. Caldwell isn't the landlord," a voice said from the doorway. We all turned. Daniel stood there, composed, tailored suit, legal calm radiating from him. My father's face rearranged itself into a desperate smile. "Mr. Caldwell, welcome. Please, come in." Daniel walked past him without taking the offered hand and stopped beside me. "Mr. Reynolds," I said, "I'm not the owner of Reynolds Equity Holdings. I'm legal counsel. The owner is already present." He turned slightly and gestured to me. May I introduce Maya Reynolds, sole proprietor of Reynolds Equity Holdings and the new owner of this building. The silence collapsed inward. I watched understanding ripple across their faces. That's not funny, Brooke whispered. It's not a joke, I said. Reynolds Equity, Maya Elizabeth Reynolds. I bought the debt. Brooke, I bought the default. And as of 4 p.m. today, I own the roof over your head. My father turned to Daniel, panic breaking through. This is insane. She's unstable. She's homeless. She's one of the highest paid logistics executives in the country, and she is now your landlord. You can't do this, Brooke said, her voice cracking. We have a lease. You had a lease, I said, walking toward a sculpture that looked expensive from far away and cheap up close. And you defaulted on it. I'm honoring it. My father exhaled in relief. Thank God. Maya, we can fix this. I held up a hand. Since the personal guarantee was fraudulent, that clause is void, which makes the lease unsecured, and unsecured leases for tenants with a history of default require adjustments. Daniel stepped forward and handed my father a document. Effective immediately, rent adjusts to current market value, $18,000 a month. $18,000? My mother gasped. We were paying $6,000. You were, I said, when you had a guarantor. You also have $48,000 in arrears, plus fees. Total due to cure is $65,000, payable within 7 days. We don't have that, Brooke cried. Then option 2, I said calmly, vacate. The room went still. I looked at them without anger, without satisfaction, just clarity. You're evicting us, my father whispered, your own family? I'm evicting a tenant who hasn't paid rent in 4 months, I said. DNA doesn't change contracts. You taught me that. Business is business. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I already knew what I'd see. 7 days later, the gallery was empty. I stood in the vacant space, my footsteps echoing off bare walls. They had taken everything they could carry. I peeled the vinyl lettering from the window. Silverline Studio, gone. Daniel handed me the keys outside. What will you do with it? He asked. I looked at the building. Red brick, wide windows, potential. I'm keeping it, I said. Tech incubator, space for women with talent but no backing. Months later, on a clear winter morning, I stood on my balcony high above the city. My phone was silent. I'd blocked their numbers weeks ago. I didn't know where they lived. I didn't know if Brooke had recovered. And for the first time in my life, I didn't care. I sipped my coffee and looked out at Denver. The building was a small dot in the grid below, alive now with coders, founders, dreamers. My family told me to go live on the streets. They tried to erase me from their story. Instead, I rewrote the ending. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the homeless daughter. I was the architect of my own life, standing on a foundation that was solid, paid for, and mine. If this story resonated with you, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories from the Revenge Vault, share it with friends who need to hear it, and to drop a comment below with your perspective or the key lesson you took from it.